Barakatah Yahweh, Barakatah Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Barakahak Wadash, Barakatum. First and foremost, I want to give all praises, glory, and infinite honors to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone who ruled and teach well. And peace and salutations to you sincere Akim out there, pushing this word in truth and sincerity to the four corners of the globe. May you brothers endure unto the end. This is the Brother Ra'aya coming at you with another lesson, and I'll be profiling segments from this video on the Jimmy Dore Show's YouTube channel titled Russian Soldiers to Fight the U.S. and Iran with Ben Swan. And, you know, when I play the first couple of minutes, you'll see that this is a, definitely a clickbaity in a sense title. But regardless, we know according to biblical prophecy that eventually the Russians will get involved, on the side of Iran in this war, which is going to play into the bigger battle in the Valley of Jehoshaphat in Joel chapter 3, the War of Armageddon. But as we can clearly see, things are ramping up exponentially with this Jeff Steen U.S.-Israeli war against Iran. You've had over the last couple of days, that whole situation with those, U.S. planes and helicopters being shot down and the missing pilots, getting rescued and looking for and all that. Talks of the looming ground invasion of Iran, et cetera, et cetera. And things are just going to continue to escalate. But this is a fair use copyright disclaimer. I do not own any of the footage in this clip, nor do I stand to gain from it monetarily. It is simply for educational purposes.
Breaking: Russia Chechen combat units officially informed Iran that they're ready to deploy to Iran to fight alongside Iranian forces if the United States launches a ground invasion. Whoa, let's listen to this. Here we go.
Iranian state media is now claiming that combat units from Russia's Chechen Republic have declared themselves ready to deploy to Iran if the United States launches a ground invasion. According to Press TV, these forces are loyal to Chechen leader Ramzan Kadyrov and have told Tehran they will fight alongside the Iranian armed forces if US troops move beyond air and missile strikes onto Iranian soil. The reports describe the ongoing US-Israeli war against Iran as a religious war and say the Chechen side is framing any direct intervention as a jihad, a battle of good versus evil in defense of the Islamic Republic.
Well, I'm sure Trump feels like you can't have World War III without Russia. It just wouldn't be right. We have the best war and we have the best opponents you've ever seen. This is going to be a great World War III. You're going to love it. Russia would be very offended if we didn't invite them. So that's what it sounds like to me. So what do you make of that threat?
I don't know. I've talked to some sources who are saying that a lot of that's being overblown. That these are individual groups, like the Chechens are not necessarily, this group in particular is not under the overarching Russian military, so it's kind of a separatist group. And so would that involve, like, for instance, Putin calling up soldiers and sending them? No, it's a very different kind of thing. However, I don't see Russia wanting to get involved in this, China wanting to get involved in this. They don't need to, right? The advantage for Russia.
But they will, according to biblical prophecy. As Jimmy Dore made the joke, it can't be World War III without the Russians getting invited. Well, hey, Yahweh Bahasham Yahweh Shai is definitely giving these Russians an invitation to the War of Armageddon. This is Ezekiel chapter 38. I'm going to start at verse 1. And I'll say this too, with that war in Ukraine, you've got Russian soldiers, fighting in it. And you also have Chechen forces fighting in it. And I can't remember exactly who said it, but it was a higher up in the Chechen structure that told Putin, look, just close your eyes and let us handle business on these Ukrainians. So, this is all just a precursor to the true Russians fully getting involved. But this is Ezekiel chapter 38, verse 1, and the header reads, prophesy about Gog and the future invasion of Israel. And the word of Yahweh came unto me, saying, Son of man, set thy face against Gog, the land of Magog, the biblical name for the Russians, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and prophesy against him, and say, Thus saith the Lord Yahweh, Behold, I am against thee, O Gog, the chief prince of Meshech and Tubal, and I will turn thee back and put hooks into thy jaws. And that's the Lord putting those Russians in that, old confrontational Soviet Union spirit. And I will bring thee forth and all thine army, horses and horsemen, all of them clothed with all sorts of armor, even a great company with bucklers and shields, all of them handling swords. Russia's military assets being gathered down into the Valley of Jehoshaphat, the so-called Middle East, really Western Asia. Verse 5, Persia, which is the ancient name for Iran, Ethiopia and Libya with them, all of them with shield and helmet, Gomer, or Turkey, and all his bands, the house of Togarmah of the north quarters and all his bands, and many people with thee. Be thou prepared, and prepare for thyself, thou and all thy company, Persia, Iran, Gomer, Turkey, that are assembled unto thee, and be thou a guard unto them. So, with Gog in prophecy being a guard unto Persia or Iran, we can see that it's only a matter of time until those Russians, get, directly involved in this Jeffstein war against Iran. And speaking of Jeffstein, the major pushers of this conflict are, the 1948ers, the Amalekites over in the Holy Land. And just by their constant pushing and, fighting and, deletions of people on mass scales and propaganda and all that, they're turning the world more and more against them. I'm going to jump the 15-minute and 59-second mark.
I'm less worried about Trump using a nuke than I am Benjamin Netanyahu. There's a reason why they have those nukes. And so if he feels like, if Trump or if Trump resigns and the United States pulls the rug of support out from underneath Benjamin Netanyahu in Israel, which is coming at some point.
Which it won't happen, again, according to biblical prophecy. You constantly see this, seesawing going back and forth. We're going to end the war. The war's slowing down, or, the war's escalating, or, the U.S. is chiding Israel for their actions. But, hey, ultimately, both sides are full bore in on going in this war. And America is not going to leave Israel out to, dry.
I don't know if it's now. I don't know if it's next year. It's coming. And that there's a reason why they have the thing called the Samson option. There's a reason why they don't have just one nuke. They have like 200 nukes.
I think it's more than that, actually. Yeah,
yeah, probably. Yeah, at least, let's say at least 200. So there's a reason why they don't have those because they don't want to use them. They have them because they want, if they're existentially threatened, they will use them. Netanyahu is he's a bigger maniac than, Pol Pot, Idi Amin, and Hitler combined, as far as I'm concerned. And I think he would use a nuke. And then just like, Rubio admitted that, well, we had to go to war because Israel was going to start it. And we instead of saying,
hey, we had to go to war because Israel would start it. You had to go to war because, the American government is bought and paid for by the 1948ers. This is Jeremiah chapter 49, verse 20. Therefore, hear the counsel of Yahweh that he hath taken against Edom, the biblical name for you so-called white people, you Americans, Europeans, Russians, and those 1948ers over in the Holy Land, and his purposes that he hath purposed against the inhabitants of Teman. Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. Surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them, And that least of the flock is speaking of those Amalekite Edomites, those 1948ers over in the Holy Land. As Jimmy Dore just quoted what Marco Rubio said, we had to go to war because Israel would strike first. And I believe Ben Swan is going to mention it in this clip. Every time there's talks of peace or de-escalating the situation, the 1948ers do something to ratchet it back up, keeping the conflict going. And they're going to keep pushing and pushing and pushing until this fire burns out of control. And, America is going to be drawn in by the least of the flock in on their side to, cover their red ass. But who's going to be drawn in on the side of Persia is going to be Gog and Iran's other allies. And as it said, surely he shall make their habitations desolate with them. Ultimately, the land of Israel is going to get hit by nukes, but it will be rebuilt. And America is going to get hit by nukes, but it won't be rebuilt. It's going to be turned into the biblical lake of fire and then a desolate desert wasteland afterwards.
Well, we tried to because they know they can't stop them. And so if he uses a nuke, then it's all over. It's a nuclear war. It's World War III. It's done. And I think Benjamin Netanyahu would use one. And especially because if the war ends, he goes to jail.
Right.
And everybody knows that. So
everybody knows that. And
also if the war ends, attention is going to be brought back to the Jeffstein files and old DJ Donald Trump's involvement in it, as well as other high-profile figures.
Look what he's doing now with southern Lebanon.
Yeah.
Right? They've now gone in there. They're flattening southern Lebanon. The Chinese came out today and demanded that they stop, or said that they're going to get involved. I mean, there are multiple countries. The Italian prime minister, I heard reports today. I haven't verified this yet.
And what he's about to say, I did some looking up too and couldn't find any, solid information on it. But Italy has denied, the U.S. the use of its airspace for this war in Iran.
I hope it's not wrong. But I saw reports today that the Italian prime minister, Giorgia Meloni,
yes, I saw that,
came out and said either Israel gets out of southern Lebanon or they'll use a nuke.
What? I didn't hear that.
That she would bomb Israel, and they would potentially use a nuke if Israel does not get out of southern Lebanon. I think the world is looking at it and saying, we're not going to let you do the same thing to southern Lebanon that you did to Gaza. And that's what they're doing right now, and it has to stop. And what they did to Gaza was so atrocious. The genocide that happened there was so atrocious. But so much of the world just stood by and watched it happen and waited and said, well, I mean, how far would they go? Well, now you know. Now you know how far they're willing to go. Now they're doing it again in southern Lebanon. And so let's see what happens. But yeah, there are reports that a lot of countries are now standing up and saying, nope, get out or we're going to get involved. And I agree with you.
This is the book of Obadiah. I'm going to read verses 1 to 2. The vision of Obadiah. Thus saith the Lord Yahweh concerning Edom. We have heard a rumor from Yahweh, and an ambassador is sent among the heathen. The men of the Lord, the prophets, chiefly of GMS, a great millstone, preaching this word. Arise ye, and let us rise up against her in battle. These different nations of the earth rising up against you Edomites, specifically in the West, primarily America and Israel, doing it economically right now with the BRICS, but then eventually full-blown militarily. Behold, I have made thee small among the heathen, thou art greatly despised. And we can see that with these Amalekite Edomites, the 1948ers, as Ben Swan and Jimmy Dore were just going into. You've got a growing number of nations condemning the 1948ers and saying, look, we're willing to get involved to, stop you. And, them being made small among the heathen can go into your reputation being made small and also your demographics, which, what's one thing those 1948ers are known for? Having a small global population. Going back to Jeremiah 49, verse 20, the least of the flock, of the Edomites, which you Edomites as a whole are actually the global minority. Contrary to a popular Western belief.
The greatest trigger point for potential World War III is Israel. It's Netanyahu himself is the one. He won't end it, and he's the one who keeps every time there's talk of a negotiation, talk of you're going to, try to bring this thing to an end, they escalate, over and over.
Okay.
Surely the least of the flock shall draw them out. And then the main participant that's going to be drawn out is the United States of America. This is Joel chapter 2, verse 20. But I will remove far off from you the Northern Army, the North American Army, the U.S. military, all branches, which you've got about, 50,000 personnel, in the region and moving to the region right now, and will drive him into a land barren and desolate, like a desert, Western Asia. And the main staging ground is going to be Saudi Arabia, with his face toward the East Sea, because when you look at a map of Saudi Arabia, to the east you have the Persian Gulf, a little further down you have the Strait of Hormuz, which is clearly a major place of contention, and above the Persian Gulf, Iran. And then to the northeast you have the Tigris and Euphrates rivers, as well as Iraq, which, the U.S. has military personnel there. And we know, according to Revelation, 16, and I believe verse 9 as well, it talks about the Euphrates River being dried up so that the armies of the kings of the earth can be moved more easily into that region for the War of Armageddon. And his hinder part toward the utmost sea, or behind him, the Red Sea, which, over the last couple of years, the U.S. Navy has been in conflict with the Houthi, Iranian-backed Houthi Yemeni rebels. And his stink shall come up, and his ill savor shall come up, because he hath done great things, a great slaughter of U.S. military personnel in that region, which, U.S. numbers say it's about 13 to 14 U.S. servicemen that have been deleted in this war. But when you go to international sources, the numbers are in the hundreds. I've seen 600, 750. I've even heard as high as 1,300. So it's definitely more than what the, mainstream is telling you. And again, what just happened a couple of days ago, 4, U.S. aircraft getting shot down in that situation with those, pilots. Hey, those numbers are going to increase, not just the U.S., but all, parties involved, because everything you're seeing now is leading to the finale. Joel chapter 3, verse 9, proclaim ye this among the Gentiles, the heathens, prepare war with Iran, World War III, nuclear war, War of Armageddon. Wake up the mighty men, let all the men of war draw near, let them come up. All those U.S. military assets being moved into the region. And, you're seeing a lot of U.S., information's coming out of a lot of U.S. military personnel, vocalizing their displeasure with these deployments and, finding ways to not be deployed. Beat your plowshares into swords and your pruning hooks into spears. Let the weak say I am strong, which we're clearly seeing as the case with Iran, because, 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago, you would have never seen Iran moving in the way they're moving now, directly attacking, U.S. military installations, directly attacking the land of Israel, and telling America outright, look, we're looking forward to U.S. boots on the ground because we're going to bury you in the desert. Assemble yourselves and come, all ye heathen, and gather yourselves together round about. Thither cause thy mighty ones to come down, O Yahweh, which are the death angels holding back this great destruction, waiting to get the go-ahead to release it. When, you see this thing really go hot, which is going to happen mainly after the mark of the BEAST, that micro C-hip implant in Revelation 13 is mandatorily implemented. And I just saw a video by a brother talking about how Mexico is moving towards all and only digital payments at the end of 2026. And you've got all these different countries around the world talking about digital payments, digital currencies, cashless societies, you name it. So that's right around the corner as well. Let all the heathen be wakened. The United States of America, Russia, China, Iran, the State of Israel, Turkey, the NATO nations, and come up to the Valley of Jehoshaphat, which in the Hebrew is Yahweh Shaphat, which means Yahweh's judgment. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about, for ultimately afflicting the true children of Israel, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native Americans. And at the top of that list are you Edomites, as pursuant to Psalms chapter 83. For there will I sit to judge all the heathen round about. Put ye in the sickle, for the harvest is ripe. Come get you down, for the press is full. All the fats overflow, for their wickedness is great. Multitudes, multitudes in the valley of decision, for the day of Yahweh is near in the valley of decision. And as we can see, that day is very near. But that's it with this video. And with this video, I hope you sincere Akim and Akwath were edified. Just keep strong. We are almost out of this final wicked captivity of the heathen nations, chiefly of the Edomites. And as always, I'm going to say Abad Babal, Kwam Yasharella, and until next time.